Thank you. I love that idea of recovering who we are, don't you? Okay, happy May 4th. May the force be with you. I had to do it. Come on. Yes, it's a little mix of Jedi wisdom and spiritual wisdom. So, Star Wars, may the force be with you. The fourth be with you. Sorry. I should have practiced that one. And let us use the force, and let us next Sunday remember our May programs. How's that? If you want a May program, you got to come next Sunday. I don't know how to tell you anything else. Okay. Each of us, we walk our unique path. You know that our own individualized expression of whatever crap is happening is ours. But also all of that wonderful is ours. And I believe that although each of our journeys is distinct, there's a couple of things that we all have in common. I believe we all have an inner urge, which is why we show up in this community. We have an inner urge to have a higher level of beingness in this planet, to think from a higher place of awareness and openness, and to experience life not only in our humanness, but in our spiritualness, and to allow the two of them to come together in magnificence. And every Sunday, we affirm that there is a power for good in the universe, and you can consciously use it. Opening phrase that our founder, Ernest Holmes, used in his Sunday talks. But here's the thing. We're always using it, and it is always using us. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter what you call it. That one power, that spirit, that universal knowledge, that heart, God, it doesn't matter what you call it. Call it Harry, I don't care. Just, no, it's there. It's there. And we gather and we go down this spiritual path, not because it's so fun and delightful. I mean, it is most of the time. But we also do it because we want more good in our life, right? Don't we all want more love and more peace and more joy and more fun and more abundance? Don't we all want more connection, both to our higher power and to each other? I mean, you can't get enough of that good stuff. And so this month, we're going to explore some different pathways that will allow us to transcend that power, that oneness, into our everyday life. And look at what it really takes to tap into that power that's already saying, yes, yes, my beloved, what? But to tap into it consciously, productively, abundantly. And so today I'm going to look at that pathway to the power itself, which may seem like an external job, but it's an inward job. It is always an inside job. It doesn't feel that way, right? Because when we step out of here, there's all that humanness, all that materialness, all that marketing, all of that world crazy. And sometimes it looks like a mountain that we're just struggling to just to survive, that there's really no even reason to think about thriving. But thriving is what we are here to do. And we can't play it safe if that's the case. We can choose to say, be safe, but when we do that, there's less life, and there's less love, and there's less joy. Yes, there's less mountains and less valleys, but it's kind of boring, right? It's kind of boring just to be safe and sound. I have a couple of boring relatives in Iowa, and I have to tell you, it's not that exciting to hang with them. It just isn't. Because life calls us out, not to be safe, but to be in full expression, to be awake and alive and aware, to be curious, to be willing for that more goodness. Not only does life call us out for more goodness, but life, spirit, is always there to help us and to support us. You remember the story of the book of Matthew, right? In the book of Matthew, first off, in the book of Matthew, there's a lot of boats and and a lot of storms. But this story I'm talking about, the disciples are at sea, and it's early morning, and there's this wonderful mist, and there's this figure that's coming towards them, and they start to be frightful. They think it's a ghost. So what happens? But Peter calls out. Peter calls out, and Jesus says, "Take heart, do not be afraid, it is I." Jesus, the master teacher, says this. And so Peter replies, "Lord, if it's you, command me to walk on the water." Jesus says, "Come on." Peter walks a couple steps, however long he walks, I don't know. And then the wind shows up, and his fear shows back up, and he starts to sink. But the master teacher reaches out and says, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" It's kind of a big question coming from the master teacher. And it's a question he also asks often. Why do you doubt? Like you're doing it. You're doing it. Just keep doing it. But that's not easy for any of us to do, right? It's hard. It's hard to keep going. But imagine the courage it took for Peter to step out of that boat. I mean, I'm sure he had to have taken a couple of deep breaths before he did it, but when he was walking on water, imagine the joy. Like, imagine what that would be like for him. The power. Peter tapped into that one power. The one power. And as long as he was tapped in, there wasn't any room for fear to show up. But it's those little things. It's that occasional air, that wind, that little bit of thing that maybe could be a storm that I think sets all of us off a little bit. A gentleman by the name of John Ortberg wrote a book. If you want to walk on water, you've got to get out of the boat. I love it. And in this, he suggests that Peter's walk was not a failure. His sinking was not a failure at all. But the whole parable, that story, is actually an invitation from the master teacher to us to step out in faith, an invitation to be willing to get our feet wet, knowing we're not alone. Peter was invited, just like all of us get invited, right? We get invited to move beyond our doubts, move beyond our fears, to align with the truth of who we really are, and then step out, remembering that we're powerful. We are creative geniuses. We really are. And when we trust the infinite, knowing it is just saying, "Yes, my beloved," then how could we just stay in the same boat? So my question this morning to all of you is, where in your life are you willing to get your feet just a little bit wet? Not asking you to sink, but just a little bit wet. Because in order for there to be more goodness and more expression and more of all of that wonder, there needs to be a little bit of a risk. There needs to be a willingness to step out in faith. Because if we consider this life a boat, there's always some pushing and some pulling to get out of that boat we've created for ourselves, to step out beyond it into something bigger, like a luxury liner. Let's do that, right? It can either be a push, like a shove, like that 2x4 that we talk about, or it can be a pull. It could be that desire that just won't go away. It just keeps knocking at our door. I know I stepped out of my comfortable boat a few times. I stepped out of my comfortable boat when I moved here from San Diego. I mean, it was comfortable there, you guys. It was known. It was lovely weather. I had a fabulous spiritual community, great friends, less than 2 miles from the beach, right? I mean, it was good. But not only was there some desire to be closer to family, but there was also this push, this shove, right? All of a sudden, okay, well, this relationship is getting more and more difficult to be part of. And there were just all of these reasons not to stay. And then this big reason to go. Actually, Jeff coming into my life was not a big reason to go because he was willing to move to paradise, right? But I still wanted to be close to family. The answer, with all the pushing and all the pulling, I didn't have all of the dots, but I knew the dots needed me to come here. And here, I have an incredible spiritual community. I've got some great friends. I don't know how to substitute the beach, but I'm working on it, okay? Steve Jobs once said, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. Isn't that brilliant? So when we are being called to get out of the boat, whether it's pushing, pulling, or a combination of both, sometimes we just have to accept the invitation and do it and not wait for all of the dots to show up. Oprah Winfrey says, your life is calling you, not a voice that you hear. It's a tug you feel. You know, here was her tug. She was a news anchor. She was successful, but not very fulfilled. And then she was asked if she wanted to host a morning show. And everyone around her was like, that is a step down. You are like leading the evening news. You're a news anchor, and now you want to like just take over a talk show. But there was something that said yes. There was that pull that said yes. And now, we all know it was a global platform, right? It was exactly what her heart wanted. Oprah said, I had no idea that stepping out in faith would lead to such influence, but I listened to the voice within. I let it guide me. That is walking on water. But I also will tell you, walking on water, right? It's that great idea. Let's do it. Let's get out of the boat. And then like that wind, fear shows up for all of us. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of just plain old not being enough, right? That fear shows up. And sometimes it makes us return to the boat, which is fine. Maybe the next time getting out of the boat will be a little easier. But at some point, we got to get back out of the boat. We have to face our own storms. And we have to be willing to ask for help. Here's the good news. That when we get out of the boat, there is always a hand reaching out for us. Always. We're never, ever alone. We are always in communion, in communication with the one. And there's always some reassurance around us. That's why we show up in this community, right? I mean, we gather to reassure each other, to reach out a hand, to provide a hug, to listen without judgment. There's always that reassurance. And then there's grace that we talked about last month. There's always that grace that, just make sure it's never as bad as it could be, and it's always a little better than it should be, right? That's grace. God power, spirit power, that one power, it is always within us, and it is always, always, always strengthening us, and it never abandons us. That is what we know for sure. we also know that we can be willing to ask. We can ask in prayer. We can ask to have guidance. We can ask to have support. Asking doesn't have to be an admission of weakness. It's really an admission of strength, I believe. It's like, I'm here to do this, and I'm going to do this, and oh, by the way, I need you to help me do it, right? Ernest Holmes said, the answer to every problem exists at the level of spirit. The answer to every problem. If we're willing to be quiet and listen, if we're willing to seek within, to do that inner work, to have those committed inner conversations with ourselves, if we're willing just to be quiet, whether that's sitting in a room, whether that's out in nature, no matter where it is. I had a conversation this week with someone about meditation, and she was beating herself up to a certain extent because her meditation is running. And isn't that great? Running. But do you look at meditation as running? No, most people think meditation is sitting in a room and being like quiet. Meditation can be anything. And I don't know if she was beating herself up as much as just questioning, do I need to do more? Meditation, not running, because she's doing a lot of running. But the idea is that there comes a moment, no matter what's going on around us, no matter what the fear is, there comes a moment when we have to make a choice. Do we get out of the boat? Do we go back to, what do we do? And I believe if we just become willing to get our feet wet and to be quiet, Spirit will tell us what to do. A couple of other times I've stepped out of the boat. My first tithe of 10% was 10% of my unemployment check. That was a hard check to write. And that was back when we were writing checks. It was hard. But I have to tell you, what came back was abundance. I never lacked money. There was never a time when I didn't have what I needed to pay a bill or to buy groceries. There was always peace, and there were always opportunities that showed up from the blue. I mean, the government of Belize called me to do a survey. I'm like, where is Belize? I mean, things happen that you don't even know about. Truly, they do. When I stepped into forgiveness, especially my own self-forgiveness, I discovered I was more loving and more lovable. I was more willing to love. You know, for years, I kept thinking, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that thought this, if I was only thinner, smarter, younger, and blonde, life would be incredible. But when I stepped out of that whole boat of self-judgment, life was pretty good. And it just kept getting better. And this whole spiritual community opened itself up to me. It's where I met Science of Mind, was by willing to get out of the boat and out of self-judgment and just suit up at a spiritual center and sit in the back row and cry for the whole service and then leave before it ended so nobody would know I cried. But when I got out of the self-judgment boat and I was willing to let people see that I was crying, that's where it all came together for me. That's when I realized I wasn't the only one crying. And today, well, I'm still a redhead, and I'm paying really good money to be a redhead. And I'm still invested in this spiritual community. I'm still invested in a spiritual community. A spiritual community is still invested in me. And I have to tell you this right here, when we gather, this is where the magic happens. This is where our hearts open. This is where we get to be authentically ourselves and know that we are lovingly accepted, just as we are, just for who we are. So I ask, where is your life too comfortable? Oh no, I can't ask that yet. Go back. I thought I had a slide for this one. All right, so I'm going to ask you, where is your life too comfortable? Like, where are you just like cruising? And is it okay to be cruising because it's just so good? What boat are you being asked to step out of? Right? What boat? Is it what part of your life are you ready to accept more goodness? A bigger boat. And what goodness is waiting for you on that other side when you start to get your feet wet, when you take that invitation to move on up to the east side, as they used to say, right? Okay, New Thought teachers. Neville. You rise as high as your dominant feeling. You are what you believe yourself to be. My favorite, Florence. I love Florence. If you've not read Florence, you gotta read Florence. Florence was a really crazy woman in New York City who sort of self-isolated and didn't really like people. But man, she had some wisdom and she really changed lives on those people that she welcomed in. Florence, fear is only inverted faith. It is faith in evil instead of good. And Emma, there is a good for me and I ought to have it. Ought is such a powerful word. Ought. It's like, I ought to have it. It should be right here. Like right, Emma believed it's right here. And it's already mine. Not only is it already mine, but what I envision it to be, she knew it was going to show up even more. A powerful, powerful teacher. Ernest Holmes, faith is the inner knowing, it cannot die. We can lose sight of it, but it waits to be discovered. To be discovered. Just like we come here to recover. It's the same idea, right? It's like, it's just here. Waiting for us to say, to accept the invitation, to accept our genius, to accept our love. Because we have so much more to appreciate and to give than we'll ever know. Friends, greater faith, greater connections, greater time, courting that one power, it all comes together. So here's your assignment for this week. Identify one area, just one, where there's a nudge. Just one. We all have one area where there's this little nudge to just step out, to get our feet wet. And then name that first fear that shows up, because if there wasn't a fear associated with it, we'd already be doing it. So name it. Don't claim it, though. Be assured that there is everything you need to move beyond that fear. You may have to ask. We have incredible practitioners. You can fill out a prayer request. You can fill one out online. There's always help. There's always guidance. There's always someone who knows our genius for us. And then just take one step this week. Just one little bitty step. Just enough to get your feet wet. You can go up to your knees if you want, but you don't have to. But get out of the boat in that one little area. You already have everything you need. You have all the support you could possibly need. And you've got that one within you and around you, working through you, as you, for you, delighted in you, and experiencing its creation. And I can tell you, it is always ready to support wet feet. It's the truth. So it is.